And welcome to the Go Earn It podcast. I'm your host, Shane Sparks. Another hammer of a guest today, Kerry McCoy, three-time Big Ten champion, three-time All-American, two-time national champion, Hodge Trophy winner, world silver medalist, two-time Olympian, and now the executive director and the head coach of the Lehigh Valley Wrestling Club, the RTC. Kerry, this is going to be awesome. How are you?
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Shane. Looking forward to chatting with you.
I want to start with the beginning. You're from New York. How did you get involved in this great sport? And peeling the onion back a little bit, Kerry, why did it stick to Kerry McCoy?
Yeah, that's, and I've actually, it's kind of funny. I've heard a lot of people tell their origin story, for lack of a better term, in the last few years. And mine's very similar. I started wrestling in 7th grade, and the first year that in our school district that you could participate in interscholastic sports was 7th grade. The only sports that were available were wrestling and track. So I grew up, I thought I was gonna be a basketball player, right? I had a hoop in my front yard. We play every day before school, we play after school, play in the park on the weekends. It was just, and I wasn't very good, but I loved the game. So we played all the time. So I had always anticipated, like, growing up, I was going to go play basketball. But in 7th grade, there wasn't a team. The first year you could play basketball was in 8th grade. So I had a buddy, a kid that I'd grown up with through elementary school. His name was Mike Holmes. And he said, well, why don't you come out for wrestling? And again, I've heard this story from multiple people. Only thing I knew about wrestling was Hulk Hogan and Andre the Giant. And so that's what I thought it was. So I'm like, okay, I like it. I watch it every weekend, so I'm down with it. So I tell, the week before our first practice, I'm kind of racking my brain on what's my finishing move going to be. And, am I going to wear a mask or not mask? I'm going to wear the long tights or the short tights, and all that stuff. And, so obviously I was way off. And I show up to practice, and it's the other twist with it. I show up to practice my first day, and, you see the mats on the, and I'm like, okay, well, maybe gymnastics practice is over, and they didn't roll out the match yet, and they, we can come in, they're going to set up the ring, and we'll get started. So, I mean, this is going through my head as a 7th grader, and then top it off, coach walks in, and he's like, "All right, we're about to get started. Start running." And I'm like, "Wait," and I'm like, "No, track is in the spring. I'm here for wrestling. Like, I want to turnbuckles and stuff." And so I had no idea. Literally, no one in my family had wrestled. I had a couple of friends, like I said, that did it, but I really had no clue. So we were running around our middle school to warm up, and this is the really funny thing. I don't know what it was. I don't know, like, if it was because we were running through school. You never get to run in school, but no idea. But I just said, I don't know about anything about this, but I fell in love with it. I'm like, I'm going to do this for a long time. And it's still just running around that first day, and something just grabbed me on that day. And when I tell the story, a lot of people think, hey, you must have been, good right away. You must have jumped. And I said, I was terrible. I tell people I was the worst person to start wrestling that ever started wrestling in the history of wrestling. Like, I was so bad. I joke with it. I said, I was our team confidence booster. If somebody was having a bad day, my coach would say, "Oh, go wrestle with McCoy. You'll feel better about yourself." So it was not, it wasn't one of these, like, I'm going to instant, click right away. And I fell in love with it, but I was dominated, and that first year I didn't have one competitive. So again, we're on junior high wrestling. That first year, I didn't get one competitive match. Like, I didn't get a chance to compete at all. It's middle school, junior high, like, everybody gets to participate. And so but I came to practice every day, and I had one simple goal. It was just get better, right? And I was so bad that I really had no choice, but it was just, I didn't set out to be a state champ. I didn't set out to be the starter. I didn't set out to, I was like, hey, I love this, and I want to be the best that I can be at it. And that's kind of how it all started. And then, slowly but surely over the years, I got a little bit better and made my way. But yeah, that first year was, God had a plan for me, and it started with that first day, and hey, you're going to do this for a long time, and he knew, I guess, I was going to have success in it, but I did it because I fell in love with it.
Do you remember a time, Kerry, when you realized I'm pretty good at this?
It was, I always felt like I was progressively getting better. So my first year, like I said, I didn't have any competitive match during the regular season. I wrestled now. Again, I did year round. I wrestled folk style during the winter. I wrestled freestyle and Greco in the spring and summer. and came around. It's eighth grade. I wrestled, ran track in seventh grade. Eighth grade, I wrestled, ran track, and played football, wrestled, ran track. Ninth grade, played football, wrestled, and then 10th grade it was just all wrestling. So I had the year round. So that first year, I wrestled in our freestyle county tournament, which is a state qualifier, and I had one guy in my weight class. I won. Whatever. It was a close match, like a grueling nail biter break. Then I went to the state tournament in both styles, and I was fourth in Greco and I was third in freestyle. We had 4 guys in Greco, 3 guys in freestyle, or maybe a switch, right? But I lost all my matches at the state tournament, but I placed. And then the next year in eighth grade, I wrestled. I think I lost 1 match in the junior high team. And in ninth grade, I was undefeated, but I was still wrestling junior high as a freshman. And then freestyle, eighth grade, wrestled freestyle and won the state tournament freestyle. Went to the Northeast Regionals, and in ninth grade, I actually won the state tournament freestyle. Got a chance to go out to the Cadet Nationals in freestyle. I went to the Junior Nationals in Greco. So I just kind of continued to get better. But every level that I went to, I was still kind of at the bottom, right? So I get better, and then I go to the next level, and then get beat, and I get better and rise up. And I would say probably my sophomore year in high school, that was the first year I wrestled varsity. In New York, you go leagues, counties, states. So in the league tournament, that's a first qual. I lost first round of the league tournament, so I didn't even get to the qualify to qualify for states. And that was one of the times that I really, and I was never a good loser. I hated losing, but our high school hosted the county tournament, and it was a big deal, being county champs. And I remember sitting in the bleachers of the county tournament at my high school watching, all these guys compete. And I said, I don't ever want to feel this way again. And that's happened a couple times in my career, but that right there. So that summer, had a great summer. I went to the Cadet Nationals again. I ended up finishing second at the Cadet Nationals. And then the guy that beat me at the Cadet Nationals, named is Pat Schuster, he didn't want to go to the World Championships. So I got the chance to go to the Cadet World Championships. I ended up going there, silver medal. And so I think that right there was really, I had the performance, competing at high levels, but going to that first international tournament as a sophomore. And then when I came back, I just had a, higher level of confidence because I just competed at the world level. And then my junior year, I made it to the state finals. I lost in the state finals. And then my senior year, I was a state champ. So I'd say that first tick was that summer of my sophomore year where, I went, and even at the Cadet Nationals, I had good matches, even though I took second, but I had some good wins, beat a couple of guys, but I just really felt like I was starting to understand this game. And then to go to the World Championships and make the finals, I think that was one thing that's like, okay, like I'm starting to figure this thing out a little bit. I think I can do all right with it. So I would say that would probably my sophomore year was the year when I started to click and say, okay, this isn't just about, going in there and enjoying it and loving it. It's like, okay, I can actually do something, more than just show up and work hard.
We're 5 minutes into this thing, Kerry, and I want to run through a wall right now. Just love this stuff. I want to ask you this. Who's the guy that beat you your junior year of high school in the state finals?
Well, this is actually, it comes up often. So his name is John Deagle. So if you know anything about wrestling in New York, he runs the Empire Wrestling Academy. It used to be the Iowa Style Club. A lot of hammers have come out of that. KD's club. So KD used to work with John, and KD branched off to his own sub. But that's who I lost to my junior year in the state finals with John Deagle. And yeah, it's that could be a trivia pursuit question because we get to bring that up every once in a while. And through the years, he's produced some great guys, some great individuals. Actually, Yusuf Hamida, who wrestled for me at Maryland, used to go to his club. So we'd cross over a good bit through the years. So yeah, but that's who I lost to my junior year.
If I was him, that bracket would be in the living room, and I'd probably wear a shirt that said, "I beat Kerry McCoy." I mean, I love that kind of stuff. So you win it as a senior. Do you remember the feeling? That match as a senior in high school, what do you remember from that match and ultimately being a state champion? Because obviously that was a big deal at that time in your career.
Yeah. It's really interesting because, you do it, you enjoy it, you work hard, and those things. And that's, again, it wasn't like my goal is to be a state champ. I want to go out, perform, do my best. So my junior year, so my high school hadn't had a state champ. We had a couple guys that were close. My high school hadn't had a state champ. So my junior year, myself and Nicky Hall, who was my workout partner, he ended up wrestling at Old Dominion. He was an All-American. We were in the state finals, and I was 177, he was 215, so I went first. So I was on the doorstep of being our high school's first state champ, and then I lost, and then Nicky won, so he was our first state champ. And then my senior year, we had 3 from our high school in the state finals, and John Lange, who wrestled with me at Penn State, he ended up being a 3-time New York State champ. Dwayne Thompson, he was, we grew up down the street from each other, went to church together. He was a state champ. And then I was me. So I went from on the cusp of being our school's first state champ to being our 4th. So at that point, when, those 3 guys, Nick won a year before and those 2 guys won ahead of me, it was like, okay, now I'm going to be another state champ. But it got to the point for us, okay, 3 state champs in 1 year. That hadn't happened very often in New York. I think Mepham High School had done it, a few years before. So to go and be having 3 state champs for our coach, Mike Bacozzi, was an incredible thing. So I just remember, being in there, and I had wrestled a bunch of the guys that were, top ranked throughout the year, and just going out there, and there was in our, in that group, we had a bunch of guys like that year, section 11. I mean, I think out of the 14 weight class, I think we had 11 or 12 champs from our section. Like, it was an incredible year. So just to be on that team was really exciting. And, the outstanding wrestler is always something that's out there. And my buddy, Jason Kraft, who was a big part of me getting recruited to Penn State. We were rivals in high school, but great friends. He went out and he wrestled Mitch Clark in the state finals, and he had a good match there. So he was the 2 of us, we were top ranked all year and had a really good year. So it was kind of like that outstanding wrestler was going to be on the line. And I think I ended up winning 5-2 in the state finals. Jason got the outstanding wrestler. So I remember just that piece of it. It's like, okay, I get that state title. I got to hug my teammates. They both won titles. So we had 3 state champs. And the idea of, who was going to win the outstanding wrestler with all of us. We had 3 state champs. John was a sophomore. Dwayne and I were seniors. Jason was a senior. We had a couple other guys that did really well. So it was just kind of like celebrating a lot of stuff in wrestling that year that I remember most that was pretty cool to be a part of.
Why Penn State?
So that's another great story. So, ultimately it came down to, that was the best place where I felt like I can reach my goals academically and athletically. But I was telling someone this story the other day. So in the process, Penn State was, so I narrowed my list down to 9 schools. And it ended up being 8. So I had, academic schools. So, so I was looking at Ivy League schools, academic schools. So I was looking at Harvard, Brown, UPenn, and Lehigh were my academic schools. And then, my academic athletic schools, Lehigh, Michigan, Wisconsin, and Penn State were the 4. So that's, I can go the academic route, I can go the wrestling route. And through the process, it became more evident that I wanted to be in a place where, I could have a good athletic experience as well as the academic experience. And then, as I started rolling through more, it's like, my goal is to really make the Olympic team. So athletic and academic combination, but then also, winning NCAA championships, but also an opportunity to go international and have success there. So I kind of narrowed I visited Lehigh and Brown in the fall, and I visited Michigan and Penn State in the spring. And when I went to Lehigh and Brown, great visits, great programs. They were just a little bit too small for me. Now, Lehigh, in the draw of Lehigh, ironically enough, I made my way back, but Lehigh, Matt Rupel had just won a national championship in 1990, so he was a returning national champ. And I was slated to be a 190-pounder, 177, 190. So that was going to be my workout partner. Tom Hutchinson was an All-American. He was the head coach, was a big guy. And then Sergey Beloglazov was on staff. So that was the pull at Lehigh with the other 2 schools that I decided to visit. Michigan, incredible athletic program all around. I think in '89 they won the NCAA champ. They won a national championship in basketball. Football, they were right there. So just a great program. And then Wisconsin was actually the other school that I was gonna visit. But when it came down to financially, I mean, we weren't in a great situation for our family. So, Penn State was offering a better financial package than Wisconsin. So it was just one of those things where I had to make a decision, so I decided to visit Penn State instead of Wisconsin. And then my fifth visit was Cornell, but I ended up canceling my visit to Cornell after my visit to Penn State. So I visited Lehigh and Brown in the fall, and I visited Michigan and Penn State the same weekend. So I went to Michigan Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and then I flew from Ann Arbor to State College. And Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, I was in State College. Now, my Michigan visit, incredible visit, great time. Again, they had Kirk Trost there. He was a world silver medalist, NCAA champion. Dale Barr was the head coach. Joey Gilbert was in the NCAA finals the year before. Like, they had a lot, the Rawls brothers were there. Just a lot of great stuff from them. And I had a great visit. I was there the weekend of the NCAA Final Four. So I'm a year behind the Fab Five, right? Jalen Rose, Chris Webber, all those guys, Jimmy Jackson. So on my visit is the night of the Final Four game. So Ann Arbor was just electric, right? The place was going crazy. And it was like, this is great. I'm like, this is it. This is where I'm going to school. Like, I'm in. And, so this is obviously before time of verbal commitments and all this stuff. But I told the coach, I'm like, hey, this is where I want to go. Great business school. I think it was the number 3 business school in the country. So it had the academics, it had the athletics, it had, just a great culture. It had guys that were competitive on an international stage. But I was going from Michigan to State College. So, and I tell people all the time, if my visits were separate, if Penn State was the next weekend, I most likely would have canceled my visit to Penn State and I would be going to Michigan. But I flew from Ann Arbor to Michigan, got there on Sunday, and it was just a, Sunday night, hung out with some of the guys. We went to a movie. Monday, we actually watched the NCAA basketball tournament. So I'm out on my visit to Penn State. I'm telling these guys, I'm like, yeah, I'm going to be going to school with these guys next year. It's going to be awesome. Michigan's great. And these guys, John and Russ Hughes were hosting me, and they're like, yeah, whatever. The next day, Coach Fritz and Coach Lorenzo. So Lorenzo, this was last year. He was retiring. Fritz was taking over. They drove me home on Tuesday, and I sat in the back of the car. I fell asleep. I slept the whole ride home. So I didn't even talk to the coaches. Had a great visit, but it wasn't anything, when I think back to it, when I was on these other places, I felt like I was on a recruiting visit. Like, they were trying to sell me. When I was at Penn State, I felt like I was home. Like, it wasn't any special treatment. It wasn't like, hey, this is where you're going to be. Like, I just felt like one of the guys. And so that played something, after the fact when I go back and I realized it. But the night before our signing date, and this, I talked to people back and forth, and this is where people laugh when they hear. So I just said, no one was pressuring me one way or the other. It said, hey, you have great options. So I went to bed, and I said, the first school that pops in my head when I wake up tomorrow, that's where I'm going. And I woke up, and it was Penn State. So I leaned over, I had, the letters of intent. I signed the letter, I put it in the envelope, and I didn't tell anyone for about a week. I sent the letters back, but I didn't tell my parents, didn't tell my coaches, and no one was stressing me out about it. They were just like, which is normal time. And then, finally I was like, all right, I told my coach, I'm like, I'm going to Penn State. It was like, great. Later that, a couple of weeks after, so this is, and now again, just the way time has changed with recruiting, this is mid-April. So I had made my decision. Kerry Colott, who was the #1 ranked guy in the country, 4-time undefeated Pennsylvania state champ, he had committed like the week before. And, so this is just the way it changes. So the #1 kid in the country, and then I wasn't a super highly ranked kid, but we both made our decisions in mid-April. Later that month, the Espoir Nationals, which is, UWW Junior now, the national championships were in Orlando, and my coach took us down there, me and a couple of my teammates. And Penn State was there. They had about 20 guys down there. And I saw Coach Oishi, who was huge in my time at Penn State. And I saw him down there, and I said, hey, I'm coming. And he's like, I know. And that's, if you know Oishi, was, and that's when, kind of the word got out that I was going. So, but yeah, that's, again, long story how that happened, but it's just like, it wasn't similar to starting the sport itself. It wasn't a traditional way. And, but literally the night before I first name that popped in my head. And then as I played back through and I realized, I go to events, Penn State had 10, 15, 20 guys at every international freestyle event during the year. And these other schools had 2 or 3 or 4. So I just knew their commitment to international wrestling was very high. Kenny Cherto was an Olympian in '88. And then, they've had a lot of guys that were Olympic alternates in '92. So I knew that they were committed to international wrestling, and, they were top 5 in the country every year. So I knew they had a good program. They had a few national champs. Jeff Prescott, he was national champ in '91. They came back and won in '92. So they had the success, they had the academics, they had the commitment to international wrestling, and ultimately, like, it was, I felt like I was home there. So that's how I ended up there, and I think it turned out pretty well for me.
What was it like being a teammate of Kerry Kolat? Like, when I say his name, what comes to mind?
Oh my gosh. It was, and there's no, like, literally I would question my ability of, like, being an athlete at all when the things that he would do. I'm just like, who is this? Like, how do you do that at 19 years old? And, some of the workouts, and I would try to, because you wanted to be around. So it was Sean Nelson, it was Kerry Kolat, Sanshiro Abe, John and Russ Hughes. Like, they were the guys. And obviously, like, guys like Troy Sunderland, Dave Hart, Matt White, they were older guys. But these are the guys that were a year older than me. And, and obviously, like, Kolat's in my class. So these guys, the way they would train, and I would, oh, we're going to go work out. And I'd come in and I'd be a bigger guy. So, sometimes I wouldn't have a partner. So I just maybe ride the bike or sit in. And I would see these guys go after it. And I'm like, what is going on? Now I'm coming from New York, and we had, I was one of the best teams in New York, and we had some success. But the level of wrestling that these guys had was just off the chart. I mean, I remember we wrestled Iowa my freshman year at home, and Kolat wrestled Bill Zadok, and it was a big match. And Kolat is the first time I saw a flying cement job, right? I'm like, what is this? Like, what kind of sorcery are we seeing here? He had the trick knee, and he would do those things. And I mean, just the way that he would wrestle, just the way he would train. So it's just like, I would try, like, all right, this is what they're doing. I'd be on the side trying to follow it. And, halfway through it, I'm like, man, I can't, I'm done. I'm spent. And they would go another 45 minutes. They go another hour. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to try and jump back in. And then, the worst part was when those guys decided to pick on me, when all 4 of them would jump and get on the big guy. And I just, it's like those movies when you see, like, the lion, the bears, and everything's jumping on, and just like, you're trying to throw them off, and I just couldn't do anything. So, but it was great because they set such a high standard of preparation, and, and just trying to be the best and working hard, that even though I couldn't keep up with them, just the idea that I was seeing what they were doing, and some other teammates were like, all right, those guys are going, let's see what we can do. And so it always, kept that trend for me of always trying to get better. So I'm like, okay, well, if I can show up, if they're going to show up at 6 o'clock, I'll be there at 6 o'clock. And if they're going to do 50 minutes of wrestling, I'm going to go and try and do what I can, or I'm going to ride the bike, or I'm going to jump rope, or I'm going to do stance motion. So they definitely raised the bar and helped me to just understand what it is to always strive for more. And so with Kerry, the success, his freshman year, he's in the NCAA finals. He's in the Big Ten finals. It's like, that's the standard. And, it's like, okay, we want to get there. So if he's going to do something, I'm going to try and do my best to be right there with him.
I'm going to go all over the place in this conversation because it's just fascinating to me. How would you describe, when you look at the course of your career, your perseverance? Because that's when I look at your career, and in conversations I've had with you, that's the word that comes to mind. I mean, as great of a career as you had, and it was magical. I mean, you got a unicorn hanging from your head, unicorn career. But like this sport does, it's not always easy. All those credentials are phenomenal, but there's a story behind every one of those.
Yep.
How would you describe your perseverance in your career?
Yeah, and that's a great question. I think one of the things, not many people get to finish their career on their own terms. Now, not in the sense of wins and losses, but in 2004, I finished competing, and I felt like I could have competed more, but I made that conscious choice to transition and to be ready to go on. And I can look back, and you always look back and say, hey, I wish I would have done this, or I could have, should have done this, but being able to say, okay, I'm done, I'm moving on and ready for the next step. That's something that I'm most proud of with my career, is that, because of the longevity and the things that I was experiencing when I got done, even though I didn't accomplish all the accomplishments or, accolades that I wanted to, I was able to walk away from the sport. And, I've been very fortunate. I haven't had any major injuries throughout my career. And, I got little nicks and dings here, but I'm able to still continue to stay connected with sport. I can get on the mat, roll around, and play with my kids and do that stuff. So I think that's really one of the things that that I was able to preserve through that perseverance. But a lot of people talk about just the ups and downs of my career, and I never set out to do one specific thing, right? Like, my goal from the start was just to get better. Through the career, I was able to figure out different things that I wanted to try to strive for. But really understanding that I was given a gift. God gave me some great people in my life. He gave me some skills, had people around me. And I talk about this a lot, that I think is so important in this day and age, is that I always had people that were encouraging me. So that first year in wrestling, when I didn't win a match, and I was getting beat up all the time, there was no one saying, "Oh, why don't you just give this up? You're no good." Like, it was always somebody there that was able, "Hey, let's work on this." I mentioned Nikki Hall, and my junior year, so my sophomore year, I didn't make it out of the tournament, the league tournament. My junior year, I made some, and he was on the team, and I remember him, the 2 or 3 weeks for our county tournament, he took me, he grabbed me in a car and he took me around the county, and we watched the 5 or 6 best guys in our county. And he came up with a scouting report, and we prepared for those guys to be ready when we competed against him. That's not something that you normally get in sport, where he's an older guy, but that's a relationship we had. And obviously my coaches through the years, my workout partners, but I was just very blessed to have people throughout my career at every level, from middle school through international, that were always there to help me in the good times, but more importantly in the down times. I've got a great story. After my freshman year in college, I was 1 and 2 at the NCAA tournament, and I was broke. Like, I hate losing, and I'm out of it. Similar to, remember I said, my sophomore year in high school, when I sat in my high school gym, I sat in my hotel room that night, and I said, again, big statements, right? I'm never going to lose another match. So I had said that, and I was just growing. I didn't want to be around anybody. Just a traditional, like, leave me alone. I want to just be alone. And the booster club has a dinner, as they always do, and they convinced me to come to the dinner, and I'm like, I don't want to be around people. I don't want to see. And everyone there was, and I was 1 and 2. I'm a true freshman, 1 and 2 at the NCAA tournament. I didn't, I scored a half a point for our team, so it wasn't like. And encouraged patting them backs, and you're still a part of our family. We love you. That's a full atmosphere. And then I remember this the dessert was this chocolate cream pie, and someone put this big piece of chocolate cream pie in front of me, and I remember, like, all the cares in the world just melted away, and I was like, okay, like, this is it. Every year from that point on, when we have a booster club event, we'd have different gatherings. Connie Christensen was one of our she would have a chocolate cream pie for me, right? And so it's just like those, because at that point, like, that was the thing that got me out of the funk my freshman year at the NCAA tournament. So this was like that little, like, every year, like, hey, we've got you, we're with you, right? My freshman year, I lost to Ovanis Oganeson at the national duels, and I was winning 4-0, got thrown to my back with 10 seconds left to be, to tie the match up. Then I got taken down again in overtime to lose the match. We were up by maybe we're up by 8 as a team. So if he gets the pin, then going into the finals, they just need to win the national duel. So I didn't get pinned. Actually, Kenny Churchill came off the mat and got in the way of because we were out of bounds. And so I ended up losing that match. And then Greg Troxel lost to Rulon, but he didn't give up bonus points. So we won national duels. So now we're national dual meet champions. Everyone's fired up, and I'm still, like, I just lost this match. And my coach, John Fritz, who, he just coached the national dual meet championship, he comes over to me, he pats me, he gives me some encouraging words. My teammates came around, they're like, hey, it's all good, we're doing, And that right there, like, so that encouragement. So that just happened to me consistently throughout my career. And I think that made a big difference because it wasn't, I was very fortunate to never feel that burden of like, hey, I'm letting people down or I'm doing it. Like I did it for the love of it, and people, regardless of the result, people still cared about me and people supported me, you know. So I think that was a big thing with my perseverance and allowed me to continue to go, because if I had a bad match, if I had a bad performance, you know, I didn't have to worry about someone coming and yelling at me and berating me and all that. It's just like, hey, we'll get them next time. And I was really fortunate throughout my career at every step that would happen. And you know, and I took it a little bit worse when I lost, but no matter what, somebody was always there to encourage me. And so I think that really was a big part of being able to stick with it for as long as I did.
As you mentioned, you're at 190 as a true freshman. You go 1-2 at the national tournament. That's in 1993. Fast forward a year later to 1994. You bump up a weight to heavyweights, and you're a national champion. For lack of a better way to ask it, Kerry, how in the hell does that happen?
Yeah. Well, again, I go back and, you know, the easy thing is, you know, I just, as I said before, right? I sat in my hotel room that night and I said, I'm never going to lose another match. Right. You know, and then I go back, like God gave me some great people to help me along the way, you know, encourage me, help me train, you know, coach me. But it just, you know, I have the saying, right? When, you know, your goals will dictate your, you know, your daily routines, right? So I don't think I didn't work hard. I don't think I wasn't committed prior to that. But now, like in a situation, everything I did was like, hey, I'm not going to lose again. I don't want to feel that way again. So, you know, the 5 minutes later, staying after practice, you know, the getting up early and going and running, the staying in on the weekends and not, you know, going out and being social. I remember, you know, I used to go on the weekends. I used to go down and train. Greg Halliday was national runner-up for Penn State. He was heavyweight. My freshman year, he was a grad student and he was on campus. So I used to work out with him a lot. Sophomore year, he was only on campus, you know, a couple times a month. So I would drive down to his house to train with him. You know, he's 6'6", 260, just a monster. So I would drive down Friday night after practice and I'd stay for the weekend. We'd get up at 6 o'clock in the morning. I'd work on, he was a farmer. So we'd pack eggs. He's, you know, had a chicken farm, pack eggs, you know, throw the hay out, feed the animals, go work out at 8, you know, relax, go for a nap, hang out, work out again that night, Saturday night, get up Sunday morning, work out, and then I drive back to State College, you know, and I would do that a few times, you know, throughout the season because it was like I knew that was a thing that I needed to do to get better. You know, as that what became a norm, and then when he'd come to town, and you know, my coaches were great, you know, put me in a situation where I might have 3 or 4 guys switching off of me, you know, to just make sure I was in shape and I can wrestle. And you know, so I had a lot of support in that. And then every time I competed, you know, moving up a weight class, my freshman year, I was cutting a lot of weight. And, you know, it was like Monday and Tuesday were really focused on trying to get better at wrestling. And Wednesday, Thursday, Friday was losing weight and getting ready for competition. So now I was able to focus on getting better at wrestling every day. You know, the day of match, I could, you know, I had my practice match and wrestle live in the morning, the day of competition. So, you know, I think the combination of just constantly being able to work to get better, having the tools and resources around me, coaches and workout partners that were going to push me. And again, going back to that encouraging environment, you know, that I knew that I wasn't doing it for some kind of love and affection. I was able to do it and be free. And like, I'm just going here to be the best that I can be. And I know win, lose, or draw, these people still have my back and they're going to support me. So I didn't have that pressure of like, I have to go out there and do it for somebody. I'm able to just go out there and be free and let it happen. And, you know, had some good matches, a couple of close ones here and there, but it was just like, I loved going out there competing, and I loved doing it for my teammates and my coaches, and you know, to glorify God and everything that I did. And you know, and it's amazing because during it, while I was going through it, I may not have recognized it as much, but looking back on it, it's so much easier to see how important that stuff was.
What do you remember about running to the raised platform in 1994? That was North Carolina, the Dean Dome. Probably, you know, Pat Smith had won his 4th, obviously, a little before you wrestled at heavyweight. But what's that moment in life? You can put it into words. you are wrestling for a national title. Like how amazing is it?
So another thing with it, just process wise, right? So at Penn State, my freshman year, they had all of our national champs. I mean, the room now is amazing. But they had 8x10, headshots of all the national champs. And so every day my freshman year, when I ran around, we warmed up, I would look at that and I said, my face is going to be on that wall next year. And so I didn't do it my freshman year. So sophomore year, same thing. I look at it every day. My face is going to be on a wall at the end of this year. And so I remember that, going up to the stage that year, a lot of stuff happened, right? Colot was in the finals. He lost, close match there. Pat won his fourth. Lincoln McElroy won his second title. Like all these people that, Dean Morrison won a national championship after Reese Andy headlocked Les Gutchers in the semis. Like, so all these amazing things were going on. Sammy won his title, Sammy Henson. So it's just like, and so I'm the last one up there. And I just remember like, this is when you get your picture on the wall. Now, fortunately for me, I had wrestled, I was wrestling Justin Greenlee, and I'd wrestled him earlier in the year. So I had a leg up, so to speak. But I'm like, yeah, you got to go out there and you got to earn your picture on the wall. And so I remember that. And once I got on the mat, it's like, okay, let's go, let's wrestle. And fortunately, I was able to come out on top.
What's it like standing atop that podium as a national champ?
It's words really can't describe it. It's amazing because obviously back then there was no random start, so it was the last match, and traditionally, as the heavyweight wrestles, a lot of people leave the arena, and it got to the point where when in my career, some people were sticking around a little bit more. So there were actually people in there that were there, and I just remember after I won, it was like, again, my first thought was, okay, my picture's going on the wall. And then I'm like, okay, US Open's in a couple of weeks. So let's enjoy this and get ready for the US Open. And the funny thing was, so again, first time winning a national championship, they have drug testing. And I hadn't had the drug test very often in the past. So my thing, you get notified, you go right back. Coming off the mat, right? You just wrestled, I'm dehydrated. So, it's hard to go. So it took me about an hour and a half before I finally was able to get out of drug testing. So I get out and the arena's empty. There's no one left in there. And so, again, to be able to celebrate, like you get on the podium and you go and see and all. And I didn't get to do that. So I go out, the arena's empty, it's locked down. I go outside and my family was out there waiting for me. So it's probably 11:30 at night. And I remember just going and we ate dinner and I went back to my hotel room and I had a couple of my buddies that were crashing there afterwards, and I went to sleep. So I got to experience, got my hand raised. I saw some, our academic advisor, her name is Sandy Myers. She was there and I got to see her, and then went to drug test and then came back. So my family went home, and it was funny. We went to eat and somebody said they were watching, they watched her and they're like, hey, I'd like to buy you a beer. My mom was saying that. She's like, he's 19. So, but it was just like that idea of like, okay, like I won this match, and I'm excited. Let's keep getting better. Let's keep on rolling. So, but yeah, it's an incredible feeling, and more so than for me, but just to be on that stage with the other guys. I mean, you look at that, that was a pretty solid group of champs that year, and just to be one of those guys was pretty awesome.
1995, you wrestle Justin Greenlee, who you just beaten to win your first national title. He gets you in the semifinals.
Yep.
One thing I talk about, Kerry, all the time is the national titles. That's fantastic. But I've become a guy that's almost fallen in love with third place. I mean, you're the reigning national champ. You get beat in the semis by a guy that you won the previous season to win a national title. And now we're going to find out, quite frankly, what you're made out of.
Yeah.
I mean, that's my opinion. I think those are the scenarios where you really find out what you got. Yep. What do you recall from that journey, and speak to the honor in taking third place and why it was so important to get that next best thing, when my guess is you probably didn't feel like it.
Well, yeah, it was, I mean, that year, again, my goal is just to go out and be my best. And, again, I said it, not never to lose again. So when I lost that match, it was tough. It was tough. Right. But then the idea is, okay, well, you gotta finish. And, you know, and I look back on that whole experience and, you know, I came back, got beat. I remember just after that last whistle blow, and by the way, that match is still in the protest. So if they overturn it and I get the return, I'll be, but I remember the whistle blew. And so I mean, obviously we're in Iowa. You know, we're wrestling a guy from Northern Iowa. He's an Iowa boy. Great guy. Justin's a great guy. Um, you know, 15,000 people, whatever it was. And it was dead silent to me. Like, you know, you hear people like, it was silent. I couldn't hear anything for a good 5 or 6 minutes. I went, shook his hand and walked out with my coaches and heard zero. And so right after that, it was like, all right, I got to come back and get third, you know, and that's like, I got to win my next match. And ironically enough, that year, so in the consolation semis, I would have had to wrestle Nikki Hall, who was my teammate, and he was a little bit banged up, you know. So in a situation, it was like, you know, are we going to wrestle? And he ended up forfeiting to me because he was kind of banged up and he wanted to have energy to finish fifth. So he forfeited to me in the Conti semis, and then I had to wrestle for third. And it came back in a battle, and you know, I won that third place match. But what I really remember about that time is I went through that. And then if you remember in 95, Lincoln McElroy lost to Steve Marinetti. And Lincoln and we were on the cadet world team together. We were on the junior world team together. I've known Lincoln forever. I mean, we were on the junior world team in 92. I said, yeah, he's going to Iowa, I'm going to Penn State. I'm like, we're going to beat you guys. And he like, yeah, right. And we never did. We never beat him in the duel. We tied him. We won the national duels, but they won the NCAA tournament and, you know, they won the Big Ten. So, but we had a strong relationship, you know, for a long time prior to that. So I got beat in the semis, and then I won for third place, and then he lost in the finals. And I remember finding him after he lost, and after you know, because again, he's two-time returning champ. And I remember going to find him and just like being with him during that time. And it was just like, that's my friend. I don't care, you know, what school it is, but like we just went through this, you know, in the grand scheme of things, you know, it's a wrestling match, but like it's something that's really important to a lot of people and to us just to go out there and be our best. And we both lost. And I just remember being able to spend time with him after that because I had just experienced the night before and just to be able to be there. So I remember that more so than the fight back to get third because, you know, for me coming back to get third, it was a non-question. It was like, I need to come back and, you know, I need to finish this thing off. I can't get, you know, I'm not going to win, but I'm not going to lose anymore. And being able to spend time with him. And that was something that was really special to me about that event. And yeah, so it was a pretty cool thing just to be able to experience that. And ideally I would have liked to have not had to comfort him or had to share that experience with him, but you know, it all worked out.
So then in 96, you redshirt, correct?
Yep.
97, you get back out on top against Stephen Neal. You guys had crazy battles.
Yep.
Crazy battles. I mean, two absolute gladiators.
Yeah.
What do you remember from that 97 title and getting back out on top?
Yeah, so I have to give so much credit to my coaches and workout partners. So we went to California earlier, December, January of my senior year, with the full intent for me to get a chance to wrestle Steven. And we went out there, we wrestled Fresno and Bakersfield in a duel. And I beat Steven 4-0, takedown, escape, riding time. And, you know, he's a sophomore, redshirt sophomore, so he's young. But we wanted to we wanted to feel for him, wrestle him there. And then we came back and wrestled in the finals. And the thing is, and, you know, we're talking before just about the level of the things that I was able to accomplish. And, you know, I was very fortunate. That year, that NCAA tournament, we had 7 returning NCAA All-Americans. We had 2 returning NCAA champions, myself and Tolly Thompson. We had an Olympian. Jason Gleesman was an Olympian in 96. And obviously, Stephen Neal ended up being a future NFL All-Star. But like in that weight class, that's what we had. We had 7 All-Americans, 2 champs, and an Olympian in that weight class that year. So, you know, there was a lot of talent in there. And plus some younger guys that came up through. I mean, Shelton Benjamin was in it, who ended up doing real well and going. So incredible weight class among other people that were there. So to navigate through that, it was just like every match, there was, just great matches, great athletes going after it. So when I get to the finals, similar, it's my last college match. I'd beaten Steve early before. I knew they were going to make adjustments. I'm making adjustments. And, I felt like I was doing a real good job pushing the pace. I got him hit for stalling early in the match. And the match is going well. I'm riding, Noah could ride him. And I don't know if you remember the match, but I'm riding him. And then he hits a Granby and reverses me and almost gets back points. So he gets a 2. I get an escape. Third period, I get out, get an escape, and I pressure. He gets hit for stalling with about 20 seconds left. And I win 3-2. And it was, in such an incredible battle. I just felt, again, that match that I had to wrestle him early was a big match to be able to go and then come back and finish that way. But just to finish it off, and again, that 97 class of national champs and that finals it's an incredible, just top to bottom, so much amazing. That's when Gable and Iowa broke the scoring record. They had 6 in the finals, 5 champs. Lincoln won his 3rd title. Lee Fullhart won a title. John Kading was in the finals, tore his ACL first round and wrestled all the way back to the finals. Just so much stuff in that event. And so to be a part of it, and I remember it's at the UNI Dome, which, I got off the mat and I remember running up in the stands and seeing my family and stuff. And just that overall thing. And then, so that's the competitive side of it. But really what I thought was really special about it. So afterwards, I remember I told you a story about my sophomore year with drug testing. So I'm like, now I've had a few other years of, drug tests, so I got it, but I'm like, I'm not reporting right now. And so I hung out after you have an hour to report. So I hung out, spent time, got to see people interact, friends and people on the floor, coaches. And I finally went back to report. I was in and out in like 5 minutes. So it was the right thing to do. Go back to the hotel with my family. And this is really what the coolest thing, my family and Stephen Neal's family spent about an hour and a half in the hotel lobby, just hanging out. Right. So I just, this is the guy that I just beat in the NCAA finals, and we were able to hang out and it wasn't about wrestling. It was just about, and, we had wrestled each other a few times in the past, but, who knew that throughout the next few years, we're going to battle back and forth. But to be able to have that interaction, and to this day, Stephen Neal and I are, we have a great relationship. I remember in 04 when I was wrestling at the US Open, he called me before the finals. He's like, hey, I just want to say, go out there and kick butt. And, I've seen him at multiple things. So that's what I remember most, is like the foundation of our friendship through the years was really forged in our competitive, battles, but it was more than just competition, so to be able to go out and win that championship, come in and finish off, be a part of that group of champions that year, and then build that, one of a, great relationship through the years, is really something that made that year special.
You won the Hodge in 97, winning that national title. Where's the Hodge trophy?
It's right there. So yeah, it's that's something that was pretty special. The second, third year of the event, TJ, or the award, TJ Jaworski won it, and then Les Gutches won it in 96. So that year, Lincoln McRae was outstanding wrestler of the NCAA tournament. And, again, he did a great job, had a great career, won his 3rd title. We had the weight class with the 7 All-Americans, 2 champs. So the Hodge was one of those things where it's like, well, who's going to get it? And I remember at our banquet, at the Penn State banquet, Mike Chapman brought the award and presented it at our senior. So I didn't, I had no idea. And this wasn't back where they had the crowd voting and, none of the finalists. It was just, we didn't know who was going to get it until it was awarded. So to be able to have it awarded at my senior banquet was really special. And, again, not that we do it for those things, but when you get acknowledged and recognized, it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool. So that's something that, I just encapsulates all the people and people and situations and opportunities that I had through the years, and, wrapped up in a bow with that trophy.
Want to back up for a second, because you brought up that Stephen Neal match from that final. And I always think, Kerry, like, I don't remember 20 minutes ago and I'm afraid that something's wrong with me. And then all of a sudden I'll remember something and I'll feel pretty good about it. So while you were telling that Stephen Neal story, I was thinking to myself, doing this interview with you, I don't want to look stupid, but in my mind, I was thinking to myself, what I think I remember is when he won that match, I thought he went up into the crowd.
Yeah.
You alluded to it. I'm like, sweet. I still remember that. What did you, I'm assuming that was your mom or dad when you went up in the crowd? That was your mom. What did you say to her? What do you remember from that embrace?
So my mom she's my rock, right? Like day one, obviously, literally and figuratively, like I said it before, like I wouldn't be here without her. So, and she was always there, right? Not pushed, not pulled, like she was just there for me. And so at the end of it, this is the end of my college career, and you've been there since the beginning, and I just wanted to go up and just say thank you and appreciate everything you've done. So it's just like going in and showing her some love, and I had the ability to do that, and after I made the Olympic team, after I made my second Olympic team, and so significant accomplishments, because I'm like, without you, I wouldn't be here right now. So I always wanted to try and give her that, the first acknowledgement. Obviously you have to take time to get through there, but like I want you to know that you're important to me, and when I do something, you're right there with me, and just thank you for it.
Where are the two wall charts? NCAA championship wall charts.
So they were at my parents' house for a long time. As you get older, parents, they start to accumulate stuff, and they're like, okay, now you're old enough, you can take these back. So maybe like 5 or 6 years ago, I went home and my parents had a lot of boxes and stuff, and they gave it. So they're in my basement now, but they were at my parents' house for a good, 25, 30 years. And now I have them, and I got to do a little cleaning. There's, maybe a little bit of dust on them, but they're down in my basement. And yeah, it's pretty cool to get those back and look at them. And my wife's done a great job of decorating my office and hanging some stuff. And there's still some room for some things. So maybe one day they'll go up in the wall, but they're in the basement right now.
You got a world silver medal in 2003. What is your most prized possession as far as a wrestling award in your life? You got one that stands out, or maybe I'm putting you on the spot. Which one?
Yeah. That's a good question. I think so. One of the things that I really, and again, you don't get caught up in the awards, but when it happens, it's pretty cool. So in 1995, I was voted outstanding wrestler of the Big Ten tournament, and I think I have 3 outstanding wrestler awards in my career. But to be the OW of the Big Ten tournament, that was something that was pretty special. My other OWs, I got outstanding wrestler at the national duels one year, and I got outstanding wrestler at the Pan Am Games. So I think that one, the Big Ten outstanding wrestler, was, I won as a sophomore, and then I came back. So I wrestled Billy Pierce in the finals as a sophomore. We wrestled overtime match, and then in my junior year, I think I beat him 5-1, and and Billy, incredible competitor and stuff. So that's one of those that I definitely, I'm like, yeah, this is pretty cool, knowing that who is in the field and knowing what it means. Again, the Hodge Award, that's something that's unmatched. But I think that outstanding wrestler is in that year was pretty cool.
Olympics wrapped up a couple of weeks ago. You made 2 Olympic teams, one in 2000, one in 2004. Believe you beat Stephen Neal to make that 2000 team?
Yep.
What do you remember from those Olympic experiences? What's top of mind 2 decades later?
Yeah, it's crazy to think about it. So the one thing that has always stuck with me, again, the process of making the team, and the team that helped me get there, everybody supporting me. The opening ceremonies, words can't really give it the due credit, but you walk into this arena and there's 100,000 people there screaming, and I'm walking next to NBA players, professional tennis players, track world champions, world record holders, my teammates, and it's just like, that's what it's all about. Like the winning, the losing, the medals, all that stuff, like that's something that's a part of it. But really just being under that Olympic flag, representing your country, representing your family, representing your faith in this biggest stage. And I've been able to talk about it a good bit in the last few months, obviously coming into this. This year, there are 10,000 athletes in the Olympic Games, and of those athletes, maybe 500 win medals, right? Maybe there's 500 medals given out. So you think about the number of athletes that win medals, the number of athletes that compete. We got 8 billion people in this world, and only 10,000 of them were able to compete in the Olympic Games, right? So just to be a part of that fraternity, the saying is never past, never former, once an Olympian, always Olympian, right? And it's like when you go to that opening ceremonies and you're going out there, that's when it really hits and like, yes, this is what it's all about. Now, obviously, you want to go and you want to perform, you want to try to win a medal and all that stuff. But, there are, 9,500 people that don't win medals, that didn't win medals this year. And if you say that their Olympic experience, their Olympic existence is lessened because they didn't win a medal, no way, right? So going through the opening ceremonies has always been that thing that captures my heart about the Olympic Games. And then you're seeing the triumph. You're seeing the people that, aren't supposed to be there and they're there. You see the people that aren't supposed to win and they win. And you see the people that are supposed to win and they have a stumble or an injury or something like that. And just like the ultimate, love and hate relationship with life. But when it all comes down to it, somebody comes, dust themselves off, pick themselves up. Somebody comes and dusts you off and pick you up. And so that's what I really remember about my personal Olympic experience, is being able to go and experience that opening ceremonies and, the ups and downs, the highs and lows. But then after that, so this year it's my 6th Olympic Games out of, since my first one. I've been to 6 of the last 8. And every time I just get so excited about it because I know what it means to step on that stage and to experience that. And I'm just so happy and excited for the people that get to experience that as athletes, as coaches, as administrators, and then even as fans and supporters, to be able to see that triumph and that, and that despair that people go through. And there's nothing like it. And it's just like, every 4 years you get a chance to run after it and, put it all on display, and win, lose, or draw, no one can ever take that away from you. So that's what really got from those opening ceremonies.
In all your experiences being at the Olympic Games, what is your most memorable experience?
Yeah. So I've been pretty fortunate. So the first time I went to the games, I was Bruce Baumgartner's training partner. And, you talk about the roller coaster. He lost in the earlier rounds, and then he came back and took bronze. And so to be out there and, as a partner and when he lost, like everything just crumbles. Like, oh my gosh, like how could this happen? Like this is the guy, world champion 95. He's got Olympic gold medal already. But then when he came back and was able to win that bronze medal and to be right there, not Matt's side, but in the back room when he won, that was incredible. Just to be a part of that and knowing how much of an icon he is in the sport, how much he's given to it, how his 4th medal, and to be a part of that and to see it, that was incredible. And then just 96 overall. I mean, you see, Tom and Kendall win, and Townsend's in the finals, and Bruce gets the bronze, and the guys that were out there representing our country and having it be in our home country, being in Atlanta, and just how that. So that's definitely one of my favorite experiences, is just, being in there, seeing Bruce come back and get the bronze, and seeing our other champs. And then every year, I mean, I was in London when Jordan won. I was in Beijing when Henry won, and our other athletes that are winning medals and winning championships. It's like just to see that, because again, everything that they put into it, for them to realize that. But then also the ones that didn't win, how they came back, how they held themselves, and being able to just really to relish that experience. But I'd say definitely the time of being with Bruce and seeing that is something I think is really special, and it really helped me to spark. And I remember I wrestled Kurt Angle competitively that year. I lost him a 0-0 referee's decision at US Open. So when he won the gold, and he was a world champ in 95, when he won the gold, that definitely put me like, okay, 2000, I'm going to be here. So like that full 96 experience was really important for me, I think, to help me move along.
Can I get a little more time, or you got to run?
I'm good.
Okay, this is one thing that I've noticed with you talking about this podcast so far. You need to write a book. You ever thought about it?
I have. My old strength coach, Joe Bastardi, he's talked about that a bunch of times.
Kerry, I'm telling you, you, with all your experiences as an athlete and as a coach, like you could write a book that would be riveting. Riveting. So I appreciate, I'm just going to keep going here because you got so much wisdom and knowledge, and this experience is so good. What is the match that stings the most in your career?
Oh man, I've got 3, So let me see, pick it from. So honestly, so the one that and they're all significant, right? But the one that is like it's less significant, but it's one that I think about the most. Um, so my junior year in high school at the New York State freestyle tournament, I lost to a kid named Jeff Schneider, and he was he was a pretty good wrestler, and it just like we talk about all the time, like, you should have won, you could have won, and I lost that match, and that's the one that that really sticks to me, So my junior in high school, and I lost a lot of matches to it, but that's one that, anytime people bring it up, like that's the one that pops in my head first. Again, it was for New York State Freestyle Championship. So again, it's significant because of the competitive match, but it wasn't like something that stopped me from going somewhere or anything like that. It was just, state freestyle. So that one is one that sticks out.
And why is that, Kerry? Why is it that match of all the big time matches you've been in, world championships, Olympic games, NCAA finals, and you're going to a state freestyle, not to discount it, but back in high school. So what was it about that stings yet?
Yeah, it's I think it, and not to take anything away from Jeff, but I think it was like the quintessential bad match for me. And he wrestled, I don't think he wrestled like great, but he wrestled well and I wrestled bad. And just one of those things that, when you have a bad performance, and it's like it just stings because it's like, yeah, other bad performances you had, and the caliber of competition, all that stuff, but it's just one of those things where it's just like I just had a bad match and I have no excuses, no rationale. It was a bad match, and he beat me. And yeah, and it's just like one of those things. So I don't know. I don't know why it sticks so much, but it's just like that's that one match. Maybe my teammates brought it up enough that I come and stay there, but it's just like that's the one match that I always think about. And ironically enough, it's just funny. So not that it's related to why I feel that way, but in 2003, the World Championships were in New York, and I got a friend that I went to college with, and they called me. I got a voicemail the next morning, and they're like, "Hey, I'm standing out of this club, and there's this guy said he beat you in high school, and I don't believe him, so call me back." And it was Jeff. So he ran into one of my college classmates. And he was like, "Oh yeah, some guy's wrestling. I beat him in high school." And so again, just how it comes full circle. But again, and it's not been. Let's say it's not significant. It wasn't, but it's just one of those things that when I think about those matches, that's the one that pops up to my head right away.
You mentioned you had a couple. What were the other matches?
So when I wrestled Joel Sherritt, my freshman year in college. And Joel was better than me, all intents and purposes, right? But we're in the dual meet and we're wrestling, and it came down to we're up by 6. We're up by 6 as a team. So if myself or the heavyweight, if we win the duel. We beat Iowa at home. And I lost to Joel, and it was it was actually one of those things where he was going for the go-ahead takedown to get a major. And I ended up getting a takedown. So I saved the major, but I lost the match. And that one bothered me, not for my loss personally, but like for our team. Like if I win that match, we beat Iowa. And I never, like I said, I never beat Iowa when I was on the team. As a coach, we beat them one time, but so that one just sticks to me because like that was one of the things that for our team, we could have done it. And that was a big one. The final.
So did you guys hang on to win the duel, or did you lose that duel?
We tied. So this was back, yeah. So and this was, there was no criteria, so we ended up tying that duel. So we lost at 97 heavyweight or 90 in heavyweight. I lost to Joel, and then Greg Troxel lost to John Osendorp. Both decisions, but we tied the duel. So yeah, that one's just one that's like, if I would have won, we could have beat Iowa. So that was the closest match that we had in my time in a dual meet to beat them. So again, just one of those ones that are like, for the team. And then, the finals of the World Championships. That one's gonna, that one stays with me for a long time. You know, the match I lost to Justin in the semifinals, that stays with me. State finals against John Deagle, that stays with me. So that, like I said, they have a couple of them, but yeah, definitely that my match against Jeff Snyder. I've told everyone that I know, anyone that story's been told multiple times. So Jeff, if you're out there listening, thanks, buddy.
If you, Kerry, had to go back and have a conversation with yourself as a 17, 18-year-old, looking back on it, it sounds like everything's worked out pretty well. You got great perspective on things. But if you could go back and maybe give yourself some advice that you needed at that time that you think would have proved to be pretty critical, what would it be?
I think I was very fortunate. I had a lot of people that gave me that good advice. The one thing, just answering the question now, I think I would look back and say, try to enjoy things a little more. I was super focused. I was super, driven. So in those circumstances where, we went to a competition, I go to my hotel room, I stay in my room and compete, go to my room, go back, so there were times where I potentially, probably maybe, hey, let's go down and we're all going to go out. I say in 2000, we trained in Canberra, which is about 2.5, 3 hours away from Sydney. And I was in Australia for 2 weeks, and I said I didn't see one koala or one kangaroo, right? And one night we were in the dorms where we were training, and there was like, oh, there's a herd of kangaroo out back, like, and everyone out and they were taking pictures, just one of those kind of funky things. And I was like, no, I'm just relaxing here, I'm resting, recovering, getting ready, and and I think it's important, but sometimes it's good to be able to go and just kind of pop out a little while just to get that experience. And so I think I did a decent job of it, but looking back, and some of those things where you think are not a big deal, you look back 5-10 years, you're like, oh man, I wish I would have just popped in and said hi or went down and meet this person or something like that. So that's what I'd say. Take the time to enjoy a few more things. Not get crazy and totally, but just, yeah, if your family's doing something on the weekend, and you have a chance to slide over there and, it might take a couple of minutes in the car instead of sitting on your couch and just relaxing all weekend, maybe you can do that. Or, your buddies are going fishing, even though you don't like fishing, maybe just hanging out and sitting by the water or something like that. Maybe those things, might be a little more enjoyable. But again, like I said, I feel confident that every decision that I made, every situation that I was in, through the people that were around me was the right thing. I don't have any regrets, but I would say, yeah, if there was an opportunity where it wasn't that big of a deal to, go for a walk instead of staying in and just, relaxing, maybe go for that walk and smell the roses.
You mentioned earlier you loved basketball. Who is your favorite player?
So Magic Johnson was my favorite player in high school. Big LA Lakers fan. As obviously as things evolve, Michael Jordan was pretty tough to beat. I don't watch it in the last few years. I'm not as big of a fan as I was in high school, but yeah, growing up, Magic Johnson was the guy for me.
Did you have any posters of athletes in your bedroom growing up?
I did not in my bedroom, but in our room, and I tell the story all the time, like one of the things that kind of sparked me to this Olympic thing. So 88, obviously John Smith and Kenny Monday were the Olympic champions, Kenny being the first Black Olympic champion. My high school coach went to college with Nate Carr at Iowa State. So we had that poster with Kenny and John, taking the heart out of the competition. So one, that's the Olympics, Russia, Soviet Union back then, seeing a Black man that was an Olympic champ. So that made it something that was tangible. Nate Carr, who was, college teammates, and the poster, he was after workout all sweaty and said, I don't do steroids, so neither should you. So it kind of planted that thing. It's like, you don't need to do drugs. And then Bruce and Tim Vanny, anybody can wrestle poster. So those are the three things that, we're in our wrestling room, and that really, those kind of set a standard for me in my wrestling career, but just in life in general of, the type of things and the way you kind of wanted to live. So didn't have any in my room, but, I lived in the wrestling room for all those years. So pretty much the same thing.
So piggybacking off the poster conversation, give me a move, if you remember it, against somebody that you posterized them. Like Kerry McCoy poster, what is the Kerry McCoy poster going to be?
So There would be two. So I got, so my college coach, Hoshiro Ishii, he was a great judo athlete as well as a wrestler. And so through my college career, I learned a few judo positions just to help. And that match that I said against Ovanis Solis in my freshman year, he hit me with an overhook step around trip, and then he, leg lace lateral throw. So I ended up, with the combination of that happening to me and me like, okay, I need to learn that technique, and my college coach's judo expertise. So I developed a pretty good overhook, counter series, offensive series. So in the match against Stephen Neal in our first match at the Olympic trials, he's digging with an underhook, running through for a far knee pick, and I hit him with one of those. And then in one of my matches with Tolly Thompson in the U.S. Open, same type of deal. I hit him with one of those, and got some big air out of it. So I'd say probably that would be, an overhook step across would be a good poster move for me.
Is there a moment when you showed up on somebody's poster?
Yeah, there's definitely. So in 98, well, 97, I wrestled Tom Erickson in the finals of the US Open, and he lateraled me for 4-3 to my back. When I wrestled Stephen Neal in the 98 US Open semis, so Tom was the finals, Steve was in the semis, scramble something, he got behind me and he back arched me they gave him 5 for it. I still don't think it was 5. I think he took me, but yeah, those are two that I think would make a good poster.
Couple more questions for you, Kerry. Want to talk about, you mentioned Kenny Monday wins that gold medal, first Black wrestler to win a gold medal.
Yep.
Speak to me about that, the importance of, because you're involved right now, Kerry, correct? In excuse me, I know I've seen this before. I mean, this means something to you.
Yeah.
It means a lot to you. Tell me about this.
Yeah. So, it's a simple phrase, representation matters, right? If, once you can see somebody do something, it's that much easier. You go back to the years ago when the 4-minute mile wasn't, that was a barrier, right? No one could run. And then after the 4-minute mile was broken, whatever the time was, there were so many more people that broke the 4-minute mile once someone did it once. So once you see something, it makes it that much more attainable. So for Kenny, and just to see it, right? To see he's an Olympic champion, that's something that you can aspire to. And, not only just trying to be the first one, but now it's been done before, so now, there's a space for you to do that. And so to see that in any situation. So, going back to anybody can wrestle. So it's Tim and Bruce as heavyweight and the lightweight. So in 2004, Patricia Miranda and I duplicated the deal. So again, she was the lightest weight on the women. I was a heavyweight on the men's freestyle. She has multi-ethnic background, male, woman, size. So there were a lot of different diversity things that were in there. And just to be able to celebrate. So now there's a lot of people that can see, these different things that make it, okay, now I can do it. So if I don't ever see it, I have to be the first, which is nothing wrong with that. But if I see someone else, now it gives me the permission to go out there and do it. So that's really what Kenny did for so many people, and it's just same thing. You look at Jackie Robinson in baseball, right? It's like when these things happen, great things are a result of it. So for him to be the first was set the tone for a lot of greatness. And again, I don't, not if it's super like, all right, well, I'm going to go out to be the first person. He wants to be Olympic champ, right? And then the idea that he'll be the first Black one, yeah, sure. He still wants to be Olympic champ, and then everything that comes with it. So, so it's really everything after that. Once you set that standard of, yes, this is possible for you as well it is for them as well. Everybody can be a part of it. So I think that's really the significant thing about seeing that. But again, for me, it was USA, it was Olympic champ, it was USA, Soviet Union, and then somebody that looks like me that is achieving it, all that stuff together.
What role has faith played in your wrestling journey?
It's everything. And again, on the backside of it, looking back, I can recognize and acknowledge a lot more. As I was going through, junior high, high school, college, I grew up in the church. Simple thing of like every time I'd compete, I'd pray for, God, give me strength to go out and perform to the best of my ability and glorify you with my performance, right? And that's just kind of what it was. And as I've gotten older and understanding, more of it, it wasn't just like, okay, God protect me here, but God's with me all the time. And but as an athlete, it was just that simple thing. I never prayed to win matches. I never prayed, that somebody else would lose. It was just like, give me the strength, give me the stamina, give me the ability to go out there and wrestle my best and glorify you when I do it. And it's amazing in the last 8 to 10 years how many more athletes, especially in the sport of wrestling, have been able to showcase their faith, because years past it was taboo, no matter what religion you were, to talk about or to showcase or to acknowledge it publicly, kind of keep that to yourself. So it's just so awesome now that so many athletes are able to unashamedly share their faith and glorify and represent everything that's so special. And so it's something, like I said, during it, as they're going through, it's kind of like, yeah, I'm praying and I believe, but as I get older and really understand what that means and be completely committed to my relationship with my Savior, it's unbelievable. So as an athlete, when going through it, it was important, but now looking back on it, how, like I say, I used to talk about, when you say going from 19-17 to undefeated national champ, what happened? And I used to say, yeah, I worked hard, I set my goals, and I pushed through it. As you get older, I realized, well, it was God's, ability to put me around the right people, to give me the right circumstance, the strength that he gives me. It was him, it wasn't me. So even though when I was younger, I prayed and I believed that, God was with me, as I got older, I really understood more what that meant, having a personal relationship with Jesus, not just I go to church and I read my Bible, but I have that relationship. And that's where I've been able to grow in the last 10, 15 years, where, in high school and college, it was like, okay, I believe in God and I'm going to pray, for him. But now he's on this journey with me and we're walking it together.
Fantastic. Love that. Go Earn It podcast, name of the podcast. In your career, Kerry, again, I know there's more than one. It's so awesome. Like, you actually take these questions head on. What is the go earn it moment in your career? Like, where is that one time where you had to, again, learn something about yourself, deck is stacked against you, and you had to go earn it to propel you to great things?
Yeah, I would say the one that popped in my head when you first said it, the World Cup. We wrestled the World Cup, and it was USA and Iran. Great match, back and forth, came down. We needed a pin to win the World Cup. And I was wrestling a pretty good Iranian and, got put down and he gut wrenched me. I stepped over a gut wrench and I pinned him in there. And it was like one of those things that, again, not just for me, but for our team, for our country, for the World Cup. That was an incredible experience that, so I'd say when go earn it and it affects so many other people, I would say that would be my goal when I was able to get that extra point to help us win the World Cup that first time. And, again, being able to be a part of that and celebrate that with our team for the good USA.
Would you be able to answer this question? Looking at your wrestling, and maybe it wasn't even about wrestling, the most impactful conversation you ever had with somebody about the sport, whether it was pertaining to you or not?
Yep. Yeah, I mean, I'll go back and I've said this before, that after that match, my freshman year, when I lost and we won the national dual meet championship, Coach Fritz came over to me, pat me on the back. He said, it's going to be okay. You're going to be fine. You're going to continue to do great things. I think that whole situation, I think, is one of the most meaningful, impactful things of my career, because one, not that I ever doubted it, but, I'm at Penn State. I've decided to go to Penn State and, I'm wrestling as a true freshman and having an up and down year. So that solidified that was the place that I needed to be, not just for wrestling, but this is the place where I can be and they're going to support me. And it was the right choice. My coaches care about me. My teammates care about me. The supporters care about me. And now, again, maybe there's some people behind the scenes that weren't so happy about me being there and, losing these matches every weekend. But the fact that when he had that conversation with me, when he could have been over, lifting the trophy and celebrating for the national championship, he came in and spent, 3 or 4 minutes and just you're going to be okay. And, we're glad that you're here type deal that was probably the most significant thing in my career. And, there were other moments, growing up when, someone passed me back. And like I said, with Nikki Hall taking me to scout these people and internationally getting prepared. But that's the one that always pops in as one of the most significant matches and interactions that I've had in my career.
Is there something about your career, Kerry, that very few people know about? I mean, you got such a great career, a long career. I mean, is there something like kind of random or like, damn, what? I mean, you got one of those stories?
Maybe. So obviously some people know. So we talked about the Espoir weight class or age group. So my freshman year, we went out to San Jose. They had the Espoir Nationals there, and I won Greco, and I lost in the finals to freestyle. I lost to Jeff Walter, who we battled in
Wisconsin guy, right? Wisconsin
guy,
national champ.
Yep. So through which I just realized, and after years, like we have the same birthday, which is crazy.
Hey, happy birthday, August 2nd. Correct. You just turned 50. There you go.
Yep. So I lost to Jeff. I won the Greco, and so I was on the Greco-Roman Espoir world team. And I ended up finishing fifth or seventh at the World Championship. But during that camp, I was resigned to the fact that like I'm gonna be on the freestyle team. Like something's gonna happen. I'm gonna get in. Like so I didn't want to train Greco because I was holding on to this hope that somehow I'm gonna get on this freestyle team. And I didn't. Jeff won the World Championships and I ended up, finishing fifth in Greco. But that's something that, I was a national champion Greco and, I made a world team in Greco. So that's one thing that a lot of people, don't really realize because at that age group, you don't know that. So I think that's probably one that not too many people know about, that I won a national championship in Greco and made a world team. Another cool stat about my career that I like to share, and I talked about Lincoln. So 1990, I made the cadet world team. I met the junior world team. I made the Olympic team as well as senior world teams. 1990, the cadet world team. Myself, Lincoln McRae, Brandon Slay were on that team. Junior world team in 1992, Lincoln McRae, Brandon Slay, and I were on the team. 2000 Olympic team, Lincoln McRae, Brandon Slay, and I. So it's pretty cool that the three of us were on, the age group levels all the way up. There was no university level at that time in college, but that's pretty cool that we, and I say we see Brandon all the time, and we've known each other in Lincoln. We've known each other for over 30 years, and to still have a good relationship. So that's pretty cool. Non-wrestling related specifically, but to have been on those three teams and still have a relationship with those guys after all that time is pretty cool for me.
You won 3 Big Ten titles. Give me your Mount Rushmore. You, of course, coached at Maryland in the Big Ten, so you know Big Ten wrestling.
Yep. Give
me your Mount Rushmore of Big Ten wrestlers.
Oh my God.
As far as what they did in college.
Yeah, that's a real tough one because in obviously the long history and tradition of the Big Ten, it would be hard to do because I don't want to leave some people out there.
How about just you personally, Kerry? Like just you, like no wrong answers. It might be because you saw a guy, you knew a guy, like not necessarily like debate. You know what I mean? It's just
yeah. No, I get it. So for me personally, like I put Lincoln McRae on Mount Rushmore. He was a monster, right? I think about Tom Brands dominating through that, and then a little bit of bias right now for recency bias and Holmes. You look at Aaron Brooks, you look at Bo Nickel, you look at Ed Ruth, David, those guys from Penn State. But yeah, I think that Lincoln, because he's my my contemporary and what he was able to do there. I think Ed winning 4 titles in the way that he dominated through. I think that with Aaron and with Bo and with Dave, what they were able to do, Jason Nolf, Vincenzo, like all those guys that came through Penn State. I go back, again, trying to spread it out a little bit. Chris Campbell at University of Iowa. I mean, he's just ridiculous. And then Lee Kemp for me, he's one of those guys that, again, a groundbreaker and what he was able to do. And So I would say if I just pick four, just, off of a whim, I would say Lincoln, I would say Tom, I would say Chris, and I would say Lee.
That's a great list. Would you agree with this statement? So I live in Wisconsin.
Yep.
Lee Kemp wrestled at Wisconsin. I believe Lee Kemp might be the most underrated and or underappreciated. As great as he was, and he's got the accolades, but I mean, Lee Kemp was out of this world. I mean, if you gave me a card and said, I have to debate you as to why Lee Kemp is the greatest ever, I might not win that debate, but I'll play the card. I'm not going to embarrass myself. I mean, yeah. Lee Kemp, and Lee to this day, I mean, Lee's like pushing 70 or 70 years old. I mean, the guy could be my dad. I wouldn't mess with Lee Kemp with a tank. I mean, Lee Kemp is still an absolute machine.
Yeah, yeah. So and I would agree, and just was a referee's decision away from being a four-time.
Yes.
A boycott away from being our first Olympic champ. Yep. First three-time world champion. I think he definitely, and his personality kind of lends itself, because he's not a look at me type guy. He's the guy, similar, Chris Campbell, like they go and they do their work and they go and they move on, and they don't do it for the accolades. They don't do it they do it because they want to be the best. So I think that's something that truly separates Lee from a lot of people, because you wouldn't know it. Right. If you walked in and you saw him there,
super nice guy. I mean, just always, I mean, I've never really heard Lee, and I've had the privilege to talk to him a few times, done some broadcasts. I mean, he's about as cool as it gets. Like he is, he just stays right here. I mean, Lee's the guy, like I would say Lee Kemp is one of 10 guys in the world that rolls out of bed and he's just got it. I mean, even at his age, I mean, the guy's just cool. I mean, Lee Kemp's just a cool cat.
100%.
Sure. For sure. Final question for you, Kerry. How would you finish this sentence? I believe. How would you finish that?
Oh, man. There's so much I can go with that. I believe that we are all better off if we serve more. That's a foundation. I believe in service, and if we all would serve a little bit more, I think we'd all be better off.
Man, you never disappoint, Kerry. I mean, that's a pretty tough question. I mean, it's funny when I do these podcasts, most questions I ask, if somebody asked them to me, I'd sit there and I'd be like, oh, I'd sit there for 40 seconds and have no idea how to answer it. But anyways, that was great. Yeah. I believe we would be better off if we all served more. That's a great way to end it. Kerry, you need to write a book. You need to write a book. Sure. This was awesome. And I really appreciate the time. It's been great getting to know you from, my days with the Big Ten Network, and you were at Maryland, and you're one of the great guys in this sport, and I really appreciate it. So thank you so much.
Thank you. I really appreciate it.